Hey guys, welcome back. Today's topic is about reflex actions and what happens in reflex actions. So let's begin the session. Here, reflex is a word we use very commonly when we talk about some sudden action in response to something in the environment. So here, whenever a change occur in our environment, then a sudden action is shown by us. That is what we call reflex. Okay, so here reflex is a word we use very commonly when we talk about some sudden action in response to something in the environment. For example, we say, I jumped out of the way of the bus reflexly. Second, I pulled my hand back from the flame reflexly. Third, I was so hungry my mouth started watering reflexly. So in these three examples, this word reflexly is used. It shows that these are the sudden actions. Okay, because of the change in the environment, the sudden actions are shown by the organisms. So here I jumped out of the way of the bus reflexly. So because of some dangerous condition or because of some unfavorable harmful situation, okay, this can occur. The person jumps maybe because of the accident from the bus. Okay, so I pulled my hand back from the flame reflexly. Obviously, when a person touches a flame, it is a very hot condition. The hand, the skin cannot tolerate that high temperature, so immediately the hand is withdrawn from the flame. Okay, and I was so hungry my mouth started watering reflexly. So during this, salivation occurs when a person see a favorite food item, or when a person thinks about the favorite food item, or when a person is in starvation, okay, or like this, or feeling hungry, okay, then in that situation the mouth waters. Okay, that is, mouth started watering reflexly. So these incidents are some of the examples of sudden actions, okay, in response to something in the environment, and this type of actions we call them reflex actions. Okay, now here the continuation part. A common idea in all such examples is that we do something without thinking about it. So here these tasks are performed without thinking process, okay, and without feeling in control of our reactions. There is no proper control. We cannot control those actions. They occur suddenly. Okay, they occur very fastly, involuntarily, okay, and without thinking process. This is what we call reflex action. These are sudden involuntary actions shown by the organism in response to a harmful condition or a dangerous stimuli. Okay, here, yet these are situations where we are responding with some action to changes in our environment. So all these responses are in response to changes in environment. What exactly do we mean here? How is control and coordination achieved in such situations? Let's discuss in detail about these mechanisms. Here, touching a flame is an urgent and dangerous situation for us, or in fact for any animal. Obviously, this flame, very high temperature, so when we touch it, or any animal touches the flame, that is a very high temperature condition, and it is a dangerous situation for us as well as the other animals. How would we respond to this very high temperature of flame. Here, one seemingly simple way is to think consciously about the pain and the possibility of getting burnt and therefore move our hand. This is one possible and simple way. But what can be the consequence in this situation? Okay, by the time we take the decision, by the time we think and remove our hand from the flame, the hand gets burnt. Okay, that is a dangerous condition for the animal as well as the humans. So immediately we have to withdraw the hand from the flame, otherwise the hand gets burnt because it is a dangerous situation, the flame. Okay, now here, if nerve impulses are sent around the way we have talked about earlier, then thinking is also likely to involve the creation of such impulses. So during the thinking process also, such impulses are reaching the parts of the body, the different parts of the body which are involved in showing the response. Okay, here the thinking is a complex activity, so it is bound to involve a complicated interaction of many nerve impulses from many neurons. I repeat this statement, one of the very important statements. Here, thinking is a complex activity, so it is bound to involve a complicated interaction of many nerve impulses from many neurons. So this is what happens during the thinking process. It is a complication interaction between the various nerve impulses from so many different neurons. Okay, now here the thinking tissue in our body consists of dense networks of intricately arranged neurons. One of the very important statement here. I repeat this once again. The thinking tissue in our body consists of dense networks of intricately arranged neurons. In a very complex manner, the neurons are arranged inside the body. That is a dense network form. Okay, and here it sits in the forward end of the skull. This is the location of the thinking tissue in our brain. Here it sits in the forward end of the skull and receives signals from all over the body which it thinks about before responding to them. Okay, so here the thinking tissue is receiving the signals from all over the body which it thinks about before responding to them. Here what we need to understand is it is a very complex mechanism. So many neurons are involved, many nerve impulses are interacting. Okay, so that is how the process goes on and the decision is made. Here, in order to receive the signals, the thinking part of the brain in the skull must be connected to nerves coming from various parts of the body. Obviously, okay, so in order to receive the signals from various parts of the body, this thinking tissue must be connected with each and every part in the body. Similarly, if this part of the brain is to instruct muscles to move, nerves must carry the signal back to different parts of the body. Obviously, in order to send the signals to the muscles or the other parts in the body, it must be connected with those parts in the body. So it can send back the signals to different parts of the body. If all of this is to be done, if all of this is to be done, when we touch a hot object, then you can imagine the consequence. The thinking tissue is receiving the signals from different parts of the body. It is taking the decision. It is sending the instructions to the muscles in different parts of the body. It is a time-taking process. If all of this is to be done when we touch a hot object, it may be take enough time for us to get burnt. It may take enough time. It may take enough time for us to get burnt. So this will be the consequence if the thinking tissue is involved while withdrawing the hand from the flame. When we touch a flame or a hot object, if the thinking tissue is involved, it takes time to take a decision and to send signals to the muscles in different parts of the body, and during this time period the hand gets burnt. So that is the dangerous situation for us as well as any other animal that touches flame. So here what we need to understand here is, rather than having to think about the sensation of heat, I repeat this once again, rather than having to think about the sensation of heat, if the nerves that detect heat were to be connected to the nerves that move muscles in a simpler way, the process might be completed quickly. Very, very, very important statement. And this is what we call reflex action. This is what is needed in reflex action. Here, if the nerves that detect heat were to be connected to the nerves that move muscles in a simpler way directly, then the process might be completed quickly and the organism can perform the quick action, the immediate response, the involuntary action. So this is what involved in reflex actions. Such a connection is commonly, such connection is commonly called reflex arc. So this is one very, very important concept. Reflex arc. In reflex arc, the nerves that detect heat are connected directly with the nerves that move muscles. So it is a quick response generated in this situation, and this is what we call commonly reflex arc. So this is a pathway through which the nerve impulse is passing during the reflex action. I repeat this once again. Reflex arc is nothing but the pathway through which nerve impulse is passing during reflex action. During reflex action. So this is what we call the reflex arc. So during reflex action, the path followed by the impulse is what we call reflex arc. If we look here in a diagram, you will understand better. You can see here, this is hot plate, hot object. You can see here the receptors are present in the skin. Skin is a sense organ. Receptors are present. Receptor, here one important word. Receptor can be a tissue, it can be organ, or it can be a cell which receive impulse or which receive stimulus. This is what we call receptor. So the word itself is giving a hint. Receptor will receive stimulus. Receptor will receive stimulus, and the receptor can be tissue, organ, or a cell. In this case, the receptor present in the skin, detecting the stimulus, receiving the stimulus. Stimulus here is the hot condition. here this is a hot plate. So when the when a person touches a hot plate, the receptors receive the stimulus. Then after that, you can see here, this is a sensory neuron. This sensory neuron carries this impulse from sense organ to central nervous system. That is the role of sensory neuron. So here, sense organ to central nervous system. This sensory neuron is carrying the impulses during the reflex arc, during the pathway involved in reflex action. So this is the role of sensory neuron. Now here, this is the spinal cord and brain. These are the parts in the central nervous system. And here you can see, after this sensory neuron, you can see this is a relay neuron, or it is interneuron. Relay neuron or interneuron. It is connecting the sensory neuron with motor neuron. Okay, so the connection between sensory neuron and motor neuron is relay neuron or interneuron. This motor neuron is carrying the impulses from here, the central nervous system, nervous system to effector. This is the role of motor neurons. I repeat this once again. Here, sensory neurons carry the impulses from sense organs to central nervous system, and the parts in the central nervous system are spinal cord and brain. And here, the relay neuron is, or interneuron, is a connection between the sensory neuron and the motor neuron. Here, the motor neuron carries impulses from central nervous system to the effector organ. And here, the effector can be again, it can be an organ, it can be a muscle, or it can be a gland. Okay, I repeat this once again. Effector can be an organ, or can be a muscle, or can be a gland. If it is an organ, it will perform its specific function. If it is a muscle, it will show the muscle contraction, the movement. Then if it is a gland, it will show the action of secretion. That is the effect. So these effectors, they are showing the different effects. Like here, if we take an example of muscle, it shows the movement. If it is a gland, it is secreting. So like this, if it is an organ, it is performing a specific function. So all these are the effects, all these are the responses shown by an organism during the reflex action. So this whole pathway is what we call reflex arc. Okay, so this pathway is reflex arc, and this reflex arc is seen during reflex action. And here the order is very important for exams. I repeat the order once again. First, number one, receptors receive stimulus, okay, and generate appropriate sensory impulse. Then sensory neuron is the second. It carries the sensory impulse from sense organ to central nervous system. Then the third is interneuron or relay neuron, present in central nervous system. It is connecting the sensory neuron with motor neuron. And the fourth is the motor neuron. It is carrying the impulses from central nervous system to the effector organs. Okay, and the effector organs show the secretion or the movement or particular behavior or the response. Okay, this is how the reflex arc is seen, and this is how it works during the reflex action in different animals. So the important components in reflex arc are sensory, receptor, sensory neuron, relay neuron, motor neuron, effector, and this is the fifth one. The order is receptor, sensory neuron, relay neuron, motor neuron, effector. So this is the pathway, and this is what we call reflex arc, one of the very, very important concept for exams. Okay, now moving to the next. Here, the best place, of course, would be at the point where the first meet each other. The nerves, the neurons that detect the stimulus are connected with the neurons that show the response. Here, what we discussed is if the nerves that detect the heat or any other stimulus were to be connected to the nerves that move the muscles simpler way, okay, then the process might be completed quickly. And what is the best place of this connection? The best place for the connection is here. Okay, the best place, of course, would be at the point where they first meet each other, and the nerves from all over the body meet in a bundle in the spinal cord on their way to brain. So this obviously, a bundle in the spinal cord is a place where the nerves that detect the stimulus and the nerves that show the response are connected. So it is a bundle in the spinal cord is the site. Okay, so this is how we need to understand. So most of the reflex actions are under the control of spinal cord as a bundle that connects the nerves that detect the stimulus and the nerves that show the response are present in the spinal cord. Now, reflex arcs are formed in the spinal cord itself. I repeat this once again. Reflex arcs are formed in the spinal cord itself, although the information input also goes on to reach the brain. I repeat this statement once again, very important. Reflex arcs are formed in the spinal cord itself, although the information input also goes on to reach the brain. So most of the reflexes are spinal reflexes. They are under the control of spinal cord, okay, and they are formed in spinal cord. Now moving to the next. Here, reflex arcs have evolved in animals because the thinking process of the brain is not fast enough. Very important statement. I repeat this once again. Reflex arcs have evolved in animals because the thinking process of the brain is not fast enough. And in fact, many animals have very little or none of the complex neuron network needed for thinking. This is one more reason. So these are the reasons reflex actions, the reflex arcs have evolved in animals. First reason, the thinking process of the brain is not fast enough. The second reason, many animals have very little or none of the complex neuron network needed for thinking. So because of these reasons, reflex arcs have evolved in animals. So it is quite likely that reflex arcs have evolved as efficient ways of functioning in the absence of true thought process. Very, very important. I repeat this once again. So because of these reasons, okay, the thinking process of the brain is not fast enough. Many animals have very little or none of the complex neuron network needed for thinking. So it is quite likely that reflex arcs have evolved as efficient ways of functioning in the absence of true thought process. So in the absence of true thought process, reflex arcs are functioning very efficiently. So this is about the reflex arc. However, even after complex neuron networks have come into existence, reflex arcs continue to be more efficient for quick responses. So even after the existence of these complex neuron networks in animals, the reflex arcs, they continue to be more efficient for quick responses. Okay, so here reflex actions can be of two types: unconditioned reflexes and conditioned reflexes. Here, if we speak about here, unconditioned reflexes are inborn reflexes. They are unlearned responses to a stimulus or any change in the environment. Mostly these are protective in nature. So these are unconditioned reflexes. I repeat this once again. These are inborn. They are present since birth in an individual, and these are unlearned. They are actually the natural responses seen in the organism. No learning process involved. So, inborn, unlearned responses to a stimulus or any change in the environment, they are called conditioned reflexes, and mostly they are protective in nature. Here, sneezing, yawning, these are some examples of unconditioned reflexes. And here, one more is conditioned reflexes. It is not inborn. It is not inborn, but it is acquired during the lifetime of an individual. So, conditioned reflexes are acquired during the lifetime of an individual. Okay, and here singing, dancing, these are also learnt experiences. These are also learnt experiences. These are acquired during the lifetime. Okay, so here this is the difference between unconditioned and conditioned reflexes. Here unconditioned reflexes are mostly protective in nature, and conditioned reflexes are learnt during the lifetime. Here one of the famous scientists, okay, Ivan Pavlov performed an experiment regarding conditioned reflexes. Regarding conditioned reflexes, one of the famous scientists, Ivan Pavlov, performed experiment, and this experiment, according to this experiment, okay, here dog salivates whenever it sees the food. This is the first condition. Dog salivates whenever it sees the food. Okay, now second, when the bell rings, the dog simply the bell is ringing, the dog will not salivate. So these are the two conditions in the first you can think about. Here when a dog sees the food, it will salivate. This is one. When only the bell is ringing, the dog do not salivate. So here we find the reflex action, and here there is no reflex action. Now because of training, whenever the bell rings, the food was provided to the dog. Whenever the bell was ringing, the food was provided to the dog, and like this the dog was trained for several days. So obviously in the fourth step, what happens? Whenever the bell rings, the dog will salivate, because it will associate the ringing bell and the availability of food to eat. So this is how the dog has learnt during the lifetime. Dog has learnt that whenever the bell rings, it will get the food. So this is the condition here. The ringing bell is a condition here. So Ivan Pavlov performed experiment with dog on conditioned reflexes. So this is one of the very useful concept regarding this. Okay, now let's discuss some questions based on the topic that I have discussed so far. Okay, so here first question: put the following parts of reflex arc in the correct order, beginning with the sensory receptor. I have shown you and explained you the diagram of reflex arc here, and I have also numbered. I have given the numbers of the order. The first I gave here the receptor, number 1. Number 2 I gave here sensory neuron. Number 3 relay neuron or interneuron. Number 4 motor neuron. Number 5 effector. So this was the order I explained, I discussed during the session. Now here, based on the discussion, can you now answer what is the correct option? Here A is motor neuron, B interneuron, effector is C, D sensory neuron, and E sensory receptor. So here what will be the correct option? What is the correct order? Put the following parts of a reflex arc in a correct order, beginning with the sensory receptor. So beginning with the sensory receptor, a hint is already there. It means it is starting with E. Start with E. So these two options are wrong. Among these two, the right option will be. Okay. So after sensory receptor, a sensory neuron will be there. So this one will, this is 1, this is 2. So after sensory neuron, relay neuron, interneuron. After that, motor neuron, and finally effector. So C is here. So obviously 1 is E, right? 2 is D, right? 3 is B, right? And 4 A, and 5 is C. So obviously here we get the correct sequence here. So first option is the correct option. So this is a wrong arrangement here. This is a wrong arrangement here. Okay. So first option is the most appropriate option. So first of all, receptor will be present. Then sensory neuron. Then interneuron. After that, motor neuron, and finally effector. So this is how the order will be present. So option 1 is correct. Now moving to the second question, which of the following is an example of conditioned reflex? So conditioned reflexes are learnt reflexes. They are acquired during the lifetime. So here these are the learnt experiences. Okay, so these are the learnt experiences, and these are acquired during the lifetime. These are learnt, these are acquired during lifetime. So let's find out the answer. Hand withdraws when pierced with a needle. Eyes close when anything enters into them. During digestion, food goes forward in alimentary canal. So is it learnt during the lifetime? No. Is it learnt closing of eyes when the dust falls into the eyes? Is it learnt during the lifetime? No, it is inborn. Hand withdraws when pierced with a needle. Is it learnt experience? No, this is not a learn. So these are inborn, these are unconditioned. Okay, but trained dog salivates when you ring a bell. Just now we discussed the Pavlov's experiment. Okay, so already in this experiment the dog is trained. So the trained dog salivates when you ring a bell. So this is the most appropriate option. This is an example of conditioned reflex. This is all about today's session. If you are new to my channel, subscribe for more sessions. If you liked it, share it with your friends. I'll be back with more